So hopefully I'm live. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Hello, my name is Adere, and I'm going to continue teaching you guys HTML. And we're on day 6 now, I believe, or day 5 now, I believe. This camp we're going to be talking about what we promised last camp. So we're going to be talking about CSS and styling our work. So styling the code we write with HTML. Before we want to get into that, before I go to our presentation or slide presentation I prepared, I want to practice like building a web page with what we already know. And then after that, I say we go style it with CSS after we've learned CSS. So let me make sure my microphone's good. Let's start off with styling some things first, or writing some HTML code first so we have it to style later. So Solar, I'm using Solar's code playground, as you can see here. We already have some basic code, right? So now we just need to put the basic fundamentals of our web page. We've already learned that from previous camps. So I'm just going to start off by putting maybe a title. And let's say this web page is a web page of, let's just say, a recipe page, how to make pumpkin pie, I don't know. So I'll just call it pumpkin pie recipe. Let's close that off, that H1 tag. So we're just writing some basic stuff just to refresh us on like some of the tags we've learned so far. We're not going to use all of the tags we've learned, but just some of them. So let's just run this, see how this looks. Let's do pumpkin recipe over here. Let's also put some ingredients. So I'll say the p tag, and I'll say the ingredients we will need for this dish. Let's close off our p tag. And then we're going to use a list here. So we're going to use this is an unordered list, so we're going to use the UL tag and the li tags to create our lists. So it's going to look like this. Li, we'll put UL first, right? UL. And then we're going to have our li's in here. So I'll say li. I actually don't know what you need for pumpkin pie. Maybe we'll search it up quickly. Pumpkin pie recipe. So we're just going to maybe copy some ingredients from here. I can make it up myself. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll just make it up myself. I'll say you need pumpkins. Pumpkin. Like that. I'll say milk as well. You need. Yeah, we won't be too specific. Honestly, this is just an example, so we won't be too specific because it's in our actual web page. I'll say you also need one more thing. I'll say you need dough. So that's a list component we've also added now. So I also maybe want to also add an image, and then we'll say that's pretty much the end of this basic web page. So let's say, so let's get our image now. So for the image tag, that one uses an attribute. Remember, an attribute defines an additional characteristic of a element, or it can do multiple if we have more attributes. But let's create the image tag like this, and then now we need to give it the attribute source. Okay, I believe the chat was delayed because the stream has started. Yeah, the stream has started, so I think chat's delayed. But anyways, so it's the src tag, the equal sign, and quotations. So I'm not sure if people are just joining right now. But anyways, pretty much what we're doing today, we're focusing on CSS, which we kind of talked about last camp. So we're learning how to style our work and do things with that. But pretty much what we're doing first before we get into that is we're just building a basic web page with some of the tags we've learned so far. And after that, we're going to go learn CSS, and then we're going to come back and style this so it looks a lot nicer, or it's styled compared to what it is going to be now. So let's just grab an image of a pumpkin pie. Sure, this works. So when we're putting in that source tag or the source attribute, the value we give to it has to be the source for where the image is coming from. So that's something like a URL. Remember, a URL is an address for where something lives on the internet. So what I've just done here is I've just gone to Google Images. I've searched up a pumpkin pie recipe. I've looked at the images, and I'm just copying the image location, which is the same thing as the URL. So if I say view image, it's going to open it up in a new tab. I'll get a full screen here. It's going to open up in a new tab. It's just going to open up that image by itself. And we can see this URL right here. We know that URL is what's on top of the tabs we have open, like over here. So we see this URL, and this is the URL for where this image is. And I haven't mentioned this in previous camps, but something you can use to identify URLs is the extension it has at the end, usually. So you see how it says .jpeg here? That's something that you might see on other images if you open them up in a new page as well. And maybe you also might see something like .png or .gpg without the E, and then a couple other things. So these are like extensions that help to show you if they're images or what type of file they are. So .jpeg is used for images, something like .png is used for images, .gpg is used for images, and there are, I think, a couple more. See, I'm just going to copy this URL for where this image exists, and we're going to put it in our own page. This is the image I want to load, right? So I'm going to pass that in between the quotations here. In this case, the URL is pretty long, so yeah, the URL is pretty long, so it takes up a lot of space. But anyways, we'll just continue. So we're on our next line now, I think. Yeah, we're on our next line. We can just close off the image tag. Like so, and that's pretty much our image. So let's test what we have so far again. We'll run it, and let's zoom out. So maybe we'll actually keep it this simple for now, honestly. So the pumpkin pie recipe page, ingredients you'll need for this dish: pumpkin, milk, dough. Of course, that's probably not all you need. And then we have a picture of pumpkin pie, so that works. One last thing I'm going to do is that maybe I'll add a line where I can see if I can break up the lines a bit more between the pumpkin pie dish. Because remember what a line break does? It just basically like presses that return on that line, so it creates a new line. So maybe I'll put a line break right after the list. Or maybe I'll put the list. Yeah, I'll just put the list under the image. Look at that. 1 second. There we go. On tab. Let's see like how it was before. So let's run this. I still have the list existing up here. Okay. Now let's run this. Get our output, and let's go like that. And I guess I should also move one last thing, which was the p tag where I said the ingredients you need for this list. So let's move that one down. I think like that would be good. That can be tabbed in. Now I can move that here, like this. So you run this, and this is how we have it: the pumpkin pie recipe, picture of the pumpkin, and then the ingredients you will need for this dish: pumpkin, milk, dough. So that's the basic thing we're going to stick with now. So let's keep this tab open and remember the code we have written over here. I'll just zoom in. And yeah, so let's go learn CSS now. So CSS. So we're going to go, by the way, if I didn't say that clear, we're going to come back to that page we just built now and style it with CSS after we learn about CSS and how you can style our work. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. The part we really care about is the style sheet part and how we're using it for styling. So first of all, why do we even want to use CSS? Why are we going to go learn CSS as well? HTML is for building web pages. Why do we care about CSS? So CSS is what helps make our web pages unique and stand out, and it will help make your website more appealing to viewers. CSS gives web developers are the people building the pages, so it's us. It gives us the opportunity to play with pages, layout, adjust its colors and fonts, and add effects to images, and a lot more. So just some things you can do. Once again, you can mess with how your page is laid out. That might not make too much sense by what I mean with that right now. But something that might make sense is that we can adjust the font and colors. So we can change the colors of elements we have, like our p tags. We can change the color of text. We can change the fonts they use to change the style of the text. We can add effects to things like images. We haven't discussed this, and we probably won't be getting into this, but that's just some more advanced things you can do. And you can do a lot more. So change the sizes of images, add backgrounds. Just there's a lot of things you can do with CSS. So that's pretty much what we're going to learn, why we're going to learn it. So pretty much an analogy for it, if I were to give one right now, it's kind of like in maybe an art class. Maybe you're drawing something, right? Maybe you have to like draw a portrait or something, or create a picture or something. You'd probably maybe start off with sketching it out first. So you'd use a pencil or a pen, or just something that would allow you to sketch it out, and the lines would be thin. And then after that, you'd go on top and color it. So with HTML, pretty much what we're doing is that we're just sketching out our drawing, right? We're sketching out our web page, and we're getting like the basic structure of it down. And then with CSS, we can paint over and make it stand out a lot more with more like vibrant colors and stuff, right? So we're giving it color and like its uniqueness. So once again, another analogy, I also have one here, it looks like. So with HTML only, in this case, it's a building. So with HTML only, it's just the basic structure of the building, right? The building, sure, you can say it's there, but it's just the structure. And if we add CSS to it, though, we can make the building look a lot nicer. We can make it stand out more. And yeah, so I can imagine like if you had to choose which building you'd want to live in, you'd probably choose the building to the left rather than the building to the right. And that implies the same with the web page. If you see a web page that just has like its basic structure down, and then they want to ask you for like login credentials or something, the web page might seem a little bit sketchy, just because the website doesn't look professional, right? So CSS helps with doing that. It helps. It allows us to make our website look however we want it to look. With HTML, it's just gonna always look the same. If everybody didn't use CSS and everybody only used HTML, pretty much all the web pages would look very identical. So getting into actually writing CSS now, a term we need to learn is CSS Properties. So kind of similar to what you can call an HTML element, is another term is CSS Properties. So CSS Properties are CSS Properties determine what is being styled in an element. So some examples of CSS properties are color, font size, width, height, and border. So once again, they determine what is being styled in an element. So with color, we already determined that we're styling the color. And something I want to mention is that whenever I say style, I pretty much mean like altering or adding on to something. So when I'm saying style, it's basically kind of like we're giving additional attributes to it in a sense, because we are styling it. So you can style something by adding color. You can style something by changing its font size. You can style something by changing the size of it itself. And there's just a lot of ways you can style something. So it's just affecting the appearance, right? And those are pretty much what CSS properties are, things that can affect the appearance. So color is one. We can change the color of things. Font size, once again, is another one, to change the font size of text. Width is another one. Height is another one. Those are for changing the actual size, the width and height of something. And then border is also another one, which we haven't discussed it, but we probably will today. I actually think we discussed it last camp when we were creating tables. So yeah, those are CSS properties. So once again, they determine what is being styled in an element. Okay, so writing CSS. So there are three main ways of writing our CSS, and we're going to look at those methods quickly. So the first one is external CSS. So you're writing your CSS externally. When I say external, I mean outside of, and pretty much when anybody says external, they mean outside of. So it's outside of the CSS file. The benefits of writing your CSS outside in another file, outside of the same file as your HTML file, is that it makes it easier to maintain large websites, and it can be applied to multiple documents while being managed just from one area. The downsides is that in order to write external CSS, to write it outside of that file, you have to attach it to the HTML page, which is a little bit more learning to do. And I wouldn't really even call it a downside, it's just something else you have to do. So you have to learn how to do something else, which is writing the code to attach those two files together so they can read each other. So here's an example of what external CSS looks like. So once again, it's external, so it's being written outside of the HTML document. That's pretty much what it looks like. We haven't described how we're actually writing the CSS yet, so don't worry, we're going to look at that afterwards. But yeah, so we have whatever HTML code we have here, or whatever HTML code, and we have our styling document with whatever's being styled. So method 2 is internal CSS. And that pretty much means we're internal, so we're doing it inside of. And yeah, it's pretty much the exact opposite. So now we're writing our CSS within the same HTML document as well. And the benefits of this is that it's somewhat more simplistic because everything's in one place, I guess you could say. Another benefit is that, or actually really another benefit is just that it's faster to do. If you're working something like a code playground, you can do it. But yeah, so it has more downsides. And yeah, so first of all, if you're working with a larger web page, maybe you're building a lot bigger of a web page than just like a single, like the example I showed where it's just like just a little bit of text and an image. It would not be great for that because the more code you have crunched into that document, the harder it is to go make changes because you have to do a lot of scrolling and there's a lot of searching for things. So yeah, it's just kind of weird to have everything in one document, especially if it's two different languages as well. So usually what people do is that they separate each language they're using into a different file. And yeah, so it makes larger pages harder to maintain. So method 3 is inline CSS. So inline is still inside of the document as well, but this time it's within the actual lines of our HTML code. And the way we do this is by using the style attribute. So yeah, this is even more simplistic now. It's a lot faster to do. We're simply just adding an attribute to our HTML element and putting our style characteristics within it. And yeah, so it's more simplistic. It's great for extremely simple websites. So it'd be great for the example I showed if I was trying to do it really fast. But the problem is that it can be very repetitive and it gets difficult when working with more complicated websites. And it makes the pages a lot more work to maintain, especially if they're larger websites. So you probably wouldn't be using inline CSS too much for a very big website. But for simple examples, maybe that's something you're trying to test out quickly, inline CSS would work well. So we can ignore this for now, actually. But yeah, so we have some new terms to learn, a couple more actually. So yeah. Next is the colon. So we're going to be using some more symbols when we're writing CSS. First of all, we're not just using actual text, but now we're using symbols. So we're using the colon. The colon has one main universal use. It's pretty much just used to show that something's following after it. So you might have seen the colon used in like a title of an article, or maybe like a list, or a lot of things. So it's just like basically, it's most commonly used to show something's following after it. So yeah, I can't really explain that much better. So it's basically like a pointer. You can basically say it serves the same use of like an arrow to show that it's like pointing to something. So colon just shows that whatever's after it, so it could be below on the next line or whatever's beside it is relating to what's before it. So what comes before the colon. So yeah, I guess you can kind of compare it to an arrow. And yeah. So the semicolon. So in many different coding languages, the semicolon is used to separate statements. And when we say statements, I essentially just mean instructions. So in this case, the statements we're writing are instructions for how we want our web page to be loaded. So yeah, in this case, it also does the same thing in CSS, and it separates those statements. So for example, if I gave you instructions and I said, go outside and, or if I said go outside, wash dishes as well, if I said those two, I haven't really separated the statements, right? It sounds like I'm kind of saying do them all as one thing, which can cause some problems. So pretty much what the colon does, for comparing it to that, it's pretty much just like me ending the sentence. It's like a period, and then I'm saying the next step. So I'm saying go outside, and then I'm later saying, oh yeah, go wash the dishes after that. So it's like separating the statements almost. That's what a colon's doing. So curly brackets, these are what they look like. And yeah, so curly brackets are most commonly used to indicate a group of lines should be taken together. So if you have multiple lines that hold information, if we put them in between opening and closing curly brackets, it shows that all those lines should be taken together and they should be seen together by whatever's before the opening curly bracket. So yeah, curly brackets are also known as accolades or braces. And yeah. So we've talked about inline CSS. We're going to be looking at these slides afterwards again, but this is pretty much what it looks like when we're writing it. So remember the benefits and downsides. So pretty much it's the style attribute up here, so the keyword style. Then we have our equal signs, of course, and our quotations. And now in between our quotations, here's what we pass. So first, we pass the name of our CSS property. In this case, we're styling the color of the p tag, so the color of the text. So we pass our CSS property name here. In this case, we're using the color property. Then we pass the value to that property. So each property will have its own value, right? If you're passing the CSS property, the CSS color property, you're probably going to give it the actual color. So you're going to give it red, blue, brown, green, orange, all those colors. And if you're passing something like the font size property, you're going to give it a number, right? It'd be weird if you said font size equals red. You probably say something like font size equals 3 centimeters or any other unit of measurement like pixels, which is commonly used. Then we have our semicolon ending it after we pass the value. And then we have our ending quotation as well. And that's the end of our attribute. So once again, the style attribute, when we have our quotations and equal sign, and then we pass our CSS property first, the colon to show pretty much what it's pointing to. So treat this like an arrow, I guess. And then we have our value, which is red. So color is equal to red. And then we end it off with that statement so it doesn't see any more after that with the semicolon. Then closing quotation for the attribute, and that's it. So treat this just like it's all in an attribute. And then of course we can have our p tag still, and we can have whatever text we have there. So this is what applying one CSS property on a single element looks like. In this case, we're applying the property color on the p element. So inline CSS. Or I just read the title pretty much. It's still inline CSS, and this is us applying multiple properties to the same element again. So now we're still doing attribute, or we're still doing the style attribute, but let's just look into what's in between the quotations again. So we have color equals red, and then we have the semicolon to stop it. And then now we're also doing font size. So I'm saying font size with the colon. I'm basically saying, look at this, it's equal to 40 pixels, and then I have the semicolon again, and then I close it. So that's what it looks like if we want to style the p tag multiple times. So we don't only want to change the color, but we also want to change the font size of it as well. And that's what it looks like. So this is just another CSS property name over here. And you might be wondering how you know what the name of a CSS property is, because you can't enter in anything here. You can't say size font, for example. You can't switch out the order of these words, or you can't put anything that's not recognized as an actual CSS property. So the way to know if something is a CSS property is to simply search it up. I think that's the simplest way to do it. If you search it up, you can search up like a property you're looking for, and you can see examples online for how they work or how you'd use them. And you'd eventually start like memorizing and like building up your knowledge and vocabulary, I guess, on like different CSS properties, and be able to use them on the fly. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And by the way, if you have any questions about anything we've discussed all the way from the beginning of camp, or you have any other questions, you can put them in chat and I'll be sure to answer them. So yeah, that's using two CSS properties. And once again, we'll look into how we can actually go find CSS properties if we don't know the name of them per se. So honestly, I say, well, let's go test out what we've just learned right now within our own page that we've built. So let me get out of full screen here. Let's go back to our code playground, and we're here now. So let's style our p tag, the one that says the ingredients you will need for this list, over down here. Let's style it so it says, let's style it so it changes the color to, let's say, orange. Let's change the color to orange. So first, let's zoom a bit more actually. So first, this is the p tag right here. So first, I'm going to give it the style attribute, and the attribute works the exact same way. It's the attribute name, then the equal sign, then our quotations, and then whatever goes in between these quotations is related to the attribute, just like the one above for the source attribute. So now we're going to first write our CSS property name, and the name we use for styling the color of like p tags or text usually is color, like that. So I want to say the color is equal to, I said orange. Let's actually just go with, let's go with orange, honestly. So I want to say the color is equal to orange, right? To show that I'm saying the color is equal to something, to basically put that equal sign or show that it's pointing to a certain color, I have to put the colon next. Then I can simply put whatever I want. So I can put red, I can put blue, and I can bit orange. So I'm going to put on orange because that's what we care about. I don't need to put any quotations around this, by the way, because once again, this colon already shows that it's pointing at this color over here, not some other color on the page. So that's pretty much it. And then the last thing we need to do, which is one of the most important things, or actually the most important thing, is to close it off with a semicolon. And that semicolon shows that it's not looking at whatever follows after. So I know this might look a little bit confusing since when we put it in quotations, everything looks blue. But if we were to have it like this, pretty much what this is saying is that color is equal to orange, then it's equal, or sorry, I don't need this colon here. If I put it like this, I'm saying color is equal to orange, and I'm saying quotation, then I'm saying the right angle bracket, the ingredients you will need, and then pretty much everything after the page. So color, now what it's pointing to is all of this stuff, when really all I should be reading is orange by itself. So to stop it from reading any more after orange, I put the semicolon after it like that. So let's test this out and see our output. So I'm just going to run it here. Once again, I'm working in the code playground. Let's go full screen here and let's scroll down. And we'll see the color for this has changed. So what we did was that we styled the P elements and we gave it a CSS property called color, and we set that color to orange over here. And we did inline CSS here, by the way, because it's inline and we're using the style attribute. So that's inline CSS. So let's go look at our next thing, which is internal CSS. Remember the benefits and the downsides to that as well. And yeah, so this is what applying internal CSS looks like. I think I might have said external earlier. I meant internal. So this is what internal CSS looks like. So instead of now using an attribute, we're using a tag called style. And this tag, hold on, I got a question. Can the style attribute be used with every single HTML tag? Yeah, I believe it can. So what was I going to say? I think last camp, or the camp where I was talking about, I think it was actually the camp where we learned about creating images. That camp we talked about how there's some attributes that are universal. So for example, the image tag, the source, let me get a full screen here, actually I'll just show you here. So this source attribute we have for the image tag, this is not universal. And when I see universal, I mean it can be pretty much used anywhere. And in this case, it means any tag. So the source attribute is not a universal tag because it only works on the image tag and maybe some other tag as well. But it pretty much defines the source of where it's getting the image from. So it makes sense to use the source attribute for something like the P tag, right? Because what is the source of the P tag? The source is going to be whatever we write, which is right here. And you can say the same about like attributes in the real world. So for example, if I say like the attribute of a human being, if I say, or actually no, if I say the attribute like a car or something, I can't say eye color is the attribute of a car, right? Because cars don't have eyes. So that wouldn't work. And that works the same way for HTML as well. So not everything has attributes, or not all attributes work on everything, but some do. So for example, style is an attribute that works on everything. So to answer your question, style attribute can be used on every single HTML tag. I believe so. And it's a universal attribute. So I can style a list, I can style the body, I can style the title tag, I can style pretty much all the tags we have here. And I'm pretty sure it can be used on any single tag at all. Because what it's doing is that just applying CSS to it basically. And anything can take CSS. But something like the source attribute, it cannot be styled by anything. Because if I said I want to set the source of the li tag or the ul tag to this link over here, it wouldn't really know what to do with it, right? And that once again works with the same thing in real world. So can you style the li element also? Yes, I can style the li element and I can style pretty much any tag. So this is just an attribute. I just have to put it in the p tag. I can copy and paste this and take it out of here if I wanted to. I could put it in something in like the li tag, or I could put it in something else. So let's put it in the li tag. So I'm just going to do the same way in the opening tag of the element. I put in the attribute, right? So I'm just going to put in the style because I know that works with everything. So let's try it. I'm going to run this, and I think the first item on our list, which is pumpkin, should be the color orange. So let's drag this over here, scroll down, and we see this is the case. So this first item is style now, and it's the color orange. So yeah, this isn't one of the universal attributes which can be applied on everything. And yeah, you can usually just tell kind of because of what it's being used for. Yeah, so once again, you can't give like a car the attribute of an eye, right? An eye color, because that'd be weird in the real world. Yeah, so that's universal attributes. So I didn't make that too clear. Good question. So I'm going to go full screen here and let's look at internal CSS. So internal CSS looks like this. So we use the style tag, and the style tag goes in between the head tag we already have in our document. And one of the reasons we put it in our head tag is so that we can so that can be read first by our web page. So what goes in the head tag is like when the web page is loading up, it looks at the head tag to see all the stuff, because that's where we can also put other information about our web page. But yeah, this pretty much just makes it so it reads the CSS code first, so the CSS can load with the HTML, or it can load before the HTML's in. This is what it looks like. We have the style tag once again in between the head tag. So in between the style tag now, what we're actually writing is first the name of our element. So in this case, it's the P element. So I'm just writing the name of the element by itself. We don't need to put the tags around it or the angle brackets around it. Then I have an opening curly bracket like this. And then I can go on the next line, and then I can write the name of my CSS property, so color. Then I put in my colon to show something's following after. I write the value of my CSS property, in this case it's red. And I put my semicolon off to end the statement. And I also want to put my closing curly bracket like that. And that pretty much styles the P color, so it displays as the color red. So this is another way of doing it now. And we're writing CSS using the internal CSS method, and that's using the style tag and the head tag. So let's also look at that now. Let's also use that way to write our CSS. So I'm going to go like this, and pretty much let's try. So first, I'm going to remove this from over here like so. Let's style the P tagging, and let's go back to styling that. So I'm going to go up here now in my head tag, and I'm going to create my style tags now. So I'll put it above the title tag. As long as it's in my head tag, opening and closing of it, it works. So style, that's what it looks like. And it also has a closing tag. So let's create the closing tag as well. Then on these other lines now, what we're going to put is our element that we're styling. So if I'm styling the H1 element, I put in H1. If I'm styling the P element, I put in just P, because that's the actual name of the element. So after I've put in that now, I'm going to create my curly brackets. I can do that ahead of time. So I'll just go like this, and pretty much just saying everything be taken together, right? Everything on these lines should be taken together and be read together. So that's how I would go about styling multiple properties at once, right? So first I'm going to say color, and I say is red again. And I close with the semicolon, so it looks just like this. So opening and closing curly brackets, and after the opening one on the next line, we write the name of our property, then we write the colon, then we write the value of the property, and then we write the semicolon to stop it from going any further. And if we were to do another element, if I was gonna, or not another element, if I was to style another property, I do the exact same thing on another line. I just write the name of my property, so maybe it was font size. Then I write the colon, then I write the value, so I say 40px. Px is short for pixel. I could also say cm, short for centimeters. I'll just go 40px, and then I print my thing like that. And I could continue on doing the next line, the next line, the next line if I had multiple things to style. Let's just start. I think this is the right name for styling font size. I think it actually is font size like this. So this is what this looks like if you're styling font size. This is the name of this property. So it's font, and then you put a hyphen. So it's that dash symbol, and then size. And then we have a 40 pixels. So let's try running this. First, let's actually run it without setting a value to it so we can see what the size is already. And we'll run it again to see what the size changes to. So let's run this. Scroll down here, and we see that the P tag becomes red. So it is indeed working. Let's try adding another line again. So we had font size over here, 40 pixels. We already saw what the old size of it was, but just to be clear, let's make this even larger. Let's make this 400 pixels in size. We don't have to save it here. Let's just run it. And we can see it became 400 pixels in size. So yeah, hopefully that's clear. Let me reset the size of all of this. But yeah, we pretty much made our text really large, and we did that using CSS, and I set the font size to 400 pixels. And if I didn't want to be 400 pixels, I could set it, of course, to whatever other number I want or other unit of measurement as well. So that's internal CSS, and that's just writing with the style tag. So the benefits or the difference between inline and internal, I will show you right now, and also show you why you maybe want to use internal over inline or inline over internal. So first, let's just deal with inline. So with inline CSS, say on our page we had more than just one p tag. I had another p tag. Most pages you'll probably have more than one of each element. So I'm just going to put another p tag like this, and here I'll write. Actually, let me see. Where do I want to do this? I'll put this at the end of after. Yeah, I'll put this after the list. I'll say p tag, and I'll say web page created by Adere. Okay, I'll close it like this, and I'll also put a line break here just so it creates a new line again, so I can just have multiple lines. So I'll just do BR for my line break, like this. So let's run this, see the output. To zoom out a bit here for you in order for you to see the output properly. But yeah, it looks like it's working just fine. Maybe how about I don't need this inside, I can just put it outside like this. Wrong way, go like that. Run it. That looks good, I believe. Okay, I'm gonna see what that's happening afterwards. Yeah, let's leave it. Oh, I have an empty p tag over here. Let's close that as well. We don't need that. Now let's run and see. Okay, so I guess remove the space or something. But yeah, we have web page created by Adere below. Honestly, we don't need the line break at all. But anyways, after we have this now, sorry, I keep pressing Control S to save my work, but I'm using a web browser. I'm using Solum Code Player to write it, so I don't need to save anything. Anyways, after we have another p tag, let's say I want to change the color of both p tags, okay? Because look, if I go like this, and I give it style information, so I'll zoom in and I'll write style equal quotations. I'm just going to do inline CSS, so I'll write in style, and then I'll say I want it to be called, which is where I want the color to be red here, and also want the last one to be the color red. Let's run this and see what happens. So I run this, scroll down, we see that only one of this became the color red. Only the first p tag became the color red. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because we put the style information on the same line that we wanted to affect, or the same line where the same element is that we want to affect, like this. So if I want to style another p tag, I'd have to write it again. So I'll write it out again just to show you. So it's kind of boring. I have to write up my same exact code a second time, or I can of course copy and paste it, but for this case I'll just showcase what it's like doing it like this. So I write the same inline CSS to change the color to red, and sure, now both are red. Both are the color red now. But you can imagine why for so many reasons this would be a problem. For example, this once again, this is a super duper simple page, right? All the other pages you visit probably have a lot more text on them and a lot more subheadings and a lot of stuff like that. And they're probably all the same color as well. So having to write this out for each of the elements we use, if I had a lot more, if this was a bigger web page, that could become a lot of tedious work, and it would become very time consuming, and it would become unnecessary as well. Because then later, if I changed my mind after I was done, I was like, okay, or maybe because it was Christmas season and I wanted to change the color to something else, I have to go to each of these. Values over here, and I have to change it to another color I want. I have to go here green. I have to go here green, and I have to also search for where it even is to begin with. So you can just imagine how much work this can become just to change it for each one. So now let's do this. I'm going to remove this over here. We're going to remove the inline CSS example, and we're going to use internal CSS like this. So for internal, it was opening style tag. I'll put my closing style tag now. Then after that, over here, pretty much I'm going to now put in the name of the element I'm styling, which is the P element. I'm going to put in the value I want to give to it, which is going to be the CSS property, sorry. The color is going to be red, and with the semicolon. And then let's run it now and see the output. So this is just the internal CSS we learned. Let's look at our p tags now. And let's also make sure I removed the attributes, which I did. But we still see, actually, what we see now is that both the colors for both the p tags have changed to the color red. So what's going on here? What's going on here that's different from what was going on when we used the attributes? Well, when we're writing internal CSS, or even external as well, because they pretty much look at the exact same, when we're writing it, when we set the element like this, when we put in p, we're saying all the p tags in the document. We're not just saying any specific p tag, because how would I get it to say that I'm only styling this p tag down here, right? Because I have more than one p tag. So what it's doing is that saying every single p tag that exists is going to be the color red. We do the same for any other tag as well. So any li tag that exists is going to be the color red. And we'll see that happen here, and they all become the color red. So that's what's happening when we do something like this. Now, if we want to use internal CSS like this, or even external CSS, because once again, it works the same way with how this is written, we're going to have to do something else, which is called creating like an ID or a class for a tag or element. So that's something we probably will discuss next camp. But for now, let's not get into that because that makes everything more complicated. Let's just focus on learning our CSS today. So yeah, let's just, for now, if you want to style something specifically, style only one of it. If a tag in your page, first of all, if it exists more than once, like the p tag in this example, if you want to style it two different ways, so you want the first tag to be green and you want the second to be red. Right now, the simplest way from what we know to do it is just to simply use inline CSS and write your values out for each of the tags. But next camp, we'll be learning how we can create like groups, basically like group things together on our own, so we can style those all together. So I can still use internal CSS, and I can still style each version of a single tag individually. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense on everything that's going on right now. So that's internal CSS, and that's inline CSS, but we can do more things with internal CSS, learning other things if we want to have more features. So yeah, that's how that works. So we're gonna have one last thing to touch on pretty much for today's camp, and maybe we'll look at some more CSS properties, but that's external CSS. So we don't have too much work to do about external CSS because we're not gonna be looking at that today, but because we're gonna have to leave Code Playground, and I know some of you guys are practicing this in the same area I am, which is Code Playground. Pretty much it's the exact same thing as internal CSS. There's no more learning we need to do for writing CSS in an external method. So this is what it looks like. So the only difference, it looks just like internal CSS down here, but the only difference is that we don't need the style tag first of all. And the second difference is that we're not writing it in the same HTML file document. So it's writing it in its own file. So it's a CSS file, and it's connected to the HTML file by using some other tag and another attribute. So I think still in Code Playground, over here you have your own area to write CSS. I have had it closed for a long time. You have your own area to write CSS over here, and this is literally what it looks like. This is what external CSS will look like. So it's another file besides the HTML file where you write your CSS, and it looks the exact same way internal CSS does. So yeah, we'll probably touch into that to a couple other camps when we get set up and start using our own text editors and leave Code Playground. But for now, it's something we don't need to do yet. So yeah, those are the ways of writing CSS. So what I want to do maybe quickly is I'll search up some CSS properties that we can look at. So a popular website for looking at like CS or looking at building web pages like with HTML or CSS and even JavaScript is W3 Schools. But yeah, it's probably a great place to find resources on doing things. But pretty much right here is that they just have a whole index for each letter in the alphabet for CSS properties. So CSS properties that can be used. And they also have a quick description of what it does. So this is all for A. I'm showing you like how many there really are. This is just on the letter B, and we can see how many there are. Letter C, if we go actually to letter C, we can see the one we used, which was color, and color sets the property of text. We go to D, we see E, we see F. We just see how there are a lot of CSS properties. So maybe you're trying to find a CSS property to do something. In this case, I was saying I wanted to change the height of my image. I can search up CSS T for changing height of image. I have some spelling mistakes there, like that. Change image size. Yeah, pretty much it's just you doing research online to find the properties, and you'll find an answer fairly quickly. So look, I found this link right now just from that search. CSS height and width properties are used to set height and width of an element. And then we can go to our code. We know the name of the properties now. I already know how these properties work because I knew them, but pretty much we could use them on the image tag and we could give it a height and a width. So let's do that actually. We'll just do that last example. So image, that's the name of the element, right? Then I'll go set the height and width. So first let's see the size currently. So this is currently what the size looks like. I'm going to make it a square, so both the length and the width are going to be the same. And I'll make it each 20 pixels each. So let's zoom in here. Let's do it. So first CSS property name. In this case, it's height. Then I'm going to write out the value. It's going to be, I don't remember what number I said. I'll just go with 40. So 40 pixels in height, semicolon to end the statement. And then in width, it's going to be 40 pixels again, like that. So let's run this, and we see the image became a lot smaller without even having to go full screen. So we made the image a lot smaller, just like that. If I wanted, I could change it. So maybe the height is 80, and then the width is 40. That'll make the image look weird because it's, I forget the word exactly. It's like altering the image. I forget the exact word for it, but it'll stretch out the image. And stretch. So yeah, we'll stretch out the image, but we can still do it. So yeah, that's pretty much the basics of CSS for today. What I encourage you to do on your own time, if you want to play around with CSS to make your website look a lot nicer, I encourage you to go look at some other CSS properties. So for example, maybe try to figure out how to change the background color of your page. And I'll show you how to do that quickly at the beginning of the next camp. But for now, it's going to be all we covered for today's camp. Hopefully you learned something new, and hopefully everything made sense. If you have any questions, you can put them in chat still, I believe, and I'll be able to see them, and maybe we'll try responding to the comment. But yeah, hopefully everything was clear. You learned CSS. You learned the 3 ways you can write it. And yeah, so go out and find how to change the background color of your page, or find the CSS property you used to do it, and then actually go and do it. And then I'll show you how to do it next camp as well. But yeah, that's pretty much HTML. That's pretty much the camp for today. So I'll put the link I was just using in chat right now. I think you have it. That's where I was using just to see this long list of all the CSS properties you can use. Once again, they have descriptions to the right of them. And yeah, so that's the end of today's camp. I'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you.